This week, the media has been going absolutely crazy about how Israel is starving children in Gaza to death. All the blame going on them rather than Hamas. And I want to show you the truth in this article that David Collier has put out about what actually went on behind this viral image that is going round of this starving skinny little child. Before I show you this article, I want to show you what Phil Dave had to say earlier on Talk about what is happening with the aid situation in Gaza.
And look, this is what really winds me up personally when you start sort of seeing people bang on about the conditions in Gaza. Now, make no mistake, I don't think anyone can dispute looking at photos of starving children and say, oh, that's a good thing. Of course it's not a good thing, it's horrible. But the difference is, until the Western world learn who is responsible for this and who is to actually blame, the situation there is never going to change or improve. Because actually, as things stand, there is quite a lot of aid that has entered the Gaza Strip. The only reason it goes through Israel is because Israel has to monitor very carefully to make sure that, like previous swathes of aid that has entered the Gaza Strip in years gone by, way before 7th of October, that there's no hidden weaponry in there that's going to be used against Israel. That is why they have to check it. But there is actually aid there. Do you know who the biggest blockade to that aid reaching the right people is? Is Hamas. Who are Hamas being assisted by for some ridiculous reason? The UN, UNRWA.
I mean, this is crazy. I want to dig into this UNRWA thing, because I was listening to the news overnight when I was trying to nod off, and it was the whole debate of who's actually blocking the aid. UNRWA saying that we won't work with Israel to deliver the aid, we'll only work with Hamas, which is mad to me, because well, seemingly that's what was the accusation. We know that UK is now going to be dropping aid, are ever going to drop aid parcels into the Gaza Strip. And I learned the other day that Hamas is actually fighting with all these other family clans who are trying to get hold of this aid to sell for profit. It's just an absolute lawless gangs of Gaza maelstrom out there.
Absolutely. And in particular, when you see the images of people being shot by the IDF whilst trying to get this aid, these are not people who are desperate for food. These are people who are trying to wreck the process for genuine people who require aid. So the reason why they are eliminated is because actually they're more than likely the people who are working for Hamas to try and steal the aid, to try and sell it on the black market, and to make people who identify as Palestinians' lives even more of a misery. Until the West wakes up and realises what is going on in the Gaza Strip, those images are going to keep coming. And frankly, they need to realise as well, if it weren't for Israel, there'd be even more people dead from starvation.
Very well said. I mean, every time we keep on hearing these reports of civilians just trying to get food being shot by the IDF just for the fun of it, and you have to, take these things with a pinch of salt, because you have to ask yourself, why would the IDF do that? Why would the IDF just kill an innocent civilian trying to get food for the fun of it? Because that will massively damage their reputation. Israel needs to maintain its reputation in order to continue having the support of other countries that supply weapons to them. Why would they do something like that that damages its reputation but doesn't help them succeed in their plan to destroy Hamas? Okay, there's no incentive for them to do so. And so very often when you hear all of these headlines of, oh, the IDF, they've just killed a bunch of civilians for the fun of it at an aid distribution site, it's probably that they were the case that they were killing people who are members of Hamas, people who are assisting Hamas, people in Hamas who are trying to stop civilians from getting the food and aid that they deserve. But then you have the Hamas Health Ministry tell us the so-called truth and tell us it was a load of innocent civilians, and it very often is not the case. I mean, that the media have been painting Israel to be completely evil over the past few days, like they're just out there to kill as many women and children and innocent civilians as they possibly can. It could not be further from the truth. There is so much aid going in to Gaza, and there have been huge problems in the past with that aid not reaching the people that need it, because Hamas steal the aid. In fact, I'm going to show you that now before we look at this article. So here you've got, after we had all the headlines over the past few days saying that Israel was starving the Gaza Strip, there's not enough aid, Israel decided, okay, journalists, down you come look at all the aid. And they even put out a drone shot showing the insane amounts of aid just sitting, waiting to be picked up by the UN trucks, but the UN have not been picking it up. So Israel's been putting the aid in, and the UN have not been picking it up and distributing it. So Richard Kemp says, who's been out there doing a great job of exposing what's actually going on. He says Israel brought international journalists into Gaza to view large stockpiles of aid that the UN failed to distribute while screaming about famine. Now they have been exposed. UN have resumed distribution with 270 plus truckloads of aid delivered yesterday and today. So it can be done, and Israel are doing what they can to get aid through to people, and it's people like Hamas and the people who are complicit with Hamas working with UNRWA who are stopping people from getting the aid they deserve. Now, let's go back to this story, which many of you are probably very confused about because you've probably all seen this dying little child across the news everywhere over the past couple of days. Let me show you what is going on in this article by David Collier. You can go to his website and you can support his independent journalism there. So his article is titled "The Truth Behind the Viral Gaza Famine Photo." This isn't the face of famine, it's the face of a medically vulnerable child whose suffering was hijacked and weaponized, first by Hamas, then by the global media. Now, so this child, you would have seen his face everywhere, and in fact you can see there a list of some of the places that put it up: Sky News, CNN, The Guardian, Daily Mail, New York Times, The Times. You've got some photographs here of some of the articles that went up, but who actually was this child? And you can interestingly see in the photographs, you can see in this photograph, and you can see in the photograph there that interestingly the other family members are not starving to death. Why is it that just this one little child is starving to death? Well, let's take a look at the truth about Mohammed. So this little boy was born with serious genetic disorders. He has needed specialist medical supplements since birth, like previous examples of the media using starving children going back to summer 2024. The images of a child suffering underlying and hidden health issues. A medical report issued in May 2025 states that Mohammed has been diagnosed with cerebral palsy, a group of neurological disorders affecting movement, muscle tone, and posture. And as a consequence of that cerebral palsy, he has a curved spine, an abnormal shaped spine. Yet the photos of him showing this abnormally shaped spine, everyone has been saying that is a consequence of him starving, but it is not. It is a consequence of cerebral palsy. And this guy, David Collier, he's been going back through all of the medical notes on this child to really figure out what is going on. He says this revelation raises serious issues of media integrity. The Media Express picked up a viral image circulating online and published it without verification or context, a textbook example of clickbait journalism. And the BBC, of course, the BBC were at it. The BBC, as per usual, went a step further. The BBC spoke to the kid's mother and produced a 64-second video that somehow failed to disclose that Mohammed was a child born with genetic problems and complex medical dependencies. Even in the BBC video, the mother alludes to this, referencing a prolonged struggle including physiotherapy sessions that helped him stand. The curvature of the spine, another key clue tying the child to a cerebral palsy diagnosis. But the BBC narrator never addresses this, leaving the audience to believe the heartbreaking physical condition we are seeing is the result of widespread famine. This is not journalism. This is the UK state media deliberately pushing a deceptive narrative that only serves to benefit Hamas and create fake news. And it goes on, because it's not just the child that we're hearing a completely made up story about. We're also being told that the father of this child isn't around because he was killed whilst going out to collect food. And this is simply not true. And you've got an example of what the media is saying here, where they say Mohammed's father was killed last year when he went to seek food. Again, this is reported without any attempt at verification, and this guy, clearly a brilliant independent journalist, has gone back and found the death certificates and found out when and where he was killed. So he was killed on the 28th of October 2024, and he was killed in Jabalia in what was a targeted strike on Al Kasabib Street. And we can also see that Hamas were attacking the IDF in precisely that spot at the time. Okay, this was not a case of the IDF going out and just killing civilians because they're out looking for food, for the fun of it. We had Hamas being attacked. Undoubtedly, Gazans would have been told to leave the area. This individual clearly did not. I don't know if the guy had involvement in Hamas. And you had 6 Israeli soldiers also lost in that area. So clearly quite a big scene of fighting. It's not possible to see exactly where Muhammad's father would have been looking for food. You've got some footage here. I won't go through this all with you now, but it clearly wasn't somewhere where there's an aid distribution site and everyone's there looking for food. The IDF wouldn't have targeted the site if that were the case. So again, just absolute rubbish. And he says here, the bitter truth is I shouldn't have to do this. I put out articles like this showing the truth. This is just some independent guy putting this out on his personal website. It shouldn't fall on me to call out the world's biggest media outlets for their failure to act like journalists. Why are almost all of them functioning as Hamas's useful idiots amplifying propaganda with no effort to verify facts? Is it really too much to expect them to do their jobs? Quite right. And let's take a look at what he says about how the UN is involved in this, because a lot of us, we understand why Hamas are behaving like idiots and trying to take food away from people, but a lot of people, they always say to me, oh, but Chloe, why would the UN say that all of these journalists have died and all of these children are dying? Why would they just take the Hamas-run health ministry's figures if they're not actually true? Why wouldn't they distribute aid properly? They're just a independent aid organization, but that's not exactly what's going on. So he says, time and time again, the most widely circulated images of starving children in Gaza have turned out to involve children with serious underlying medical conditions. The images are heartbreaking, but we must stay grounded. This is a war zone, and Hamas is actively using civilian population as pawns in a global propaganda campaign. Let's be clear, Hamas cannot afford to lose control over aid distribution, not if it intends to remain the ruling power in post-war Gaza. Channeling or controlling aid has always been one of the terrorist group's most reliable sources of income. That's why it has been essential for Hamas to discredit the US-Israeli GHF aid program and portray it as a failure. This has included an almost daily pantomime of unverified claims that hundreds have been killed in Israeli attacks while queuing for aid. Yet in the most documented conflict zone in history, credible video evidence remains conspicuously absent despite claims of daily occurrences. Worse still, UN agencies and international NGOs operating in Gaza are riddled with staff affiliated with terrorist groups. Whenever Hamas comes under pressure, these agencies issue carefully timed statements and take actions that conveniently align with Hamas's strategic goals. Funny that, isn't it? Which are then amplified by the army of anti-Israeli activists embedded in the legacy media. We saw this during the All Eyes on Rafah campaign in early 2024 when the IDF closed in on key leadership and hostages located there. The famine narrative is just the latest act in the play. So there we go. I won't show you the rest of that article, but you can go see it on David Collier's site if you want to. I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you for watching this video. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, I can't talk, and you want to see more like this, make sure you press the subscribe button down below and the notification bell so you don't miss out. See you next time.